Welcome to episode 4 of the Cricket Paper podcast, where Mohan and myself are looking back at the fourth test between England and India, which was drawn at Old Trafford, meaning England head to the Oval on Thursday for the final game, still 2-1 up in the series. A rare result in the Bazball era, only the second drawn test under McCullum, which was also at Old Trafford during the 2023 Ashes, though that was heavily disrupted by the weather. So just getting straight into it, Mohan, I was going to say India salvaged the draw, but that's almost a little unfair, and really they were comfortable for the vast majority of that fourth innings and seeing the game through.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, it turned out to be quite an easy run for India. But I guess when they found themselves 0 for 2 in that first over, it looked like, especially given that they were in the field for so many overs, as England got 669, you got that sense that maybe their morale was a bit shot, and again, losing those 2 wickets in the first over, you thought it was going to be over very quickly. But all credit to Gill and Rahul initially to just sort of save India's blushes a little bit. I think, given how things went at Lords, where the top order sort of got blown away, it could have been easy for the same kind of story to repeat. But I think what they did was phenomenal, really. And Gill, I think, he scored a lot of runs this series, as we've discussed, but I think this 100 was probably the best of the lot. Sort of what, the pressure he was under, the team was under, trying to sort of right the wrongs of Lords as well. I think he really set the platform, and Rahul did what he did. And then, Jadeja and Washington Sundar, I guess once the pitch maybe died down a little bit and the ball got a bit old again, they sort of just, set their stalls out for the rest of the innings, really. And like you say, in the end, it turned out to be quite comfortable for India.
And you feel the Test series, I mean, it's had everything. Every match has gone to a finish as well, which is rare these days. And you just feel like the series almost deserved to have some riding on it going into the final game.
Yeah. And like you say, it is quite rare nowadays. And, I guess we've there's been a lot of chat about the pitches throughout the series, but I guess one thing with having sort of flatter wickets is that you have a better chance of getting games going into that final day. So then it becomes a lot about the tactics and the skill on show, as opposed to just pure luck because of the pitch doing all sorts for the bowlers. So in that sense, I think, I guess we have a little bit to thank, for the pitches. But I guess India still have a lot to play for at the Oval. To draw a series in England is hard work. We know winning is very rare in England. To draw a series will be a huge result, I think, for this very young Indian side. Obviously, it was well talked about the retirement of Kohli, Sharma, Ashwin. To see how a very young team go, and especially a team that hasn't had much success recently in Test cricket. They have been on the losing side quite a bit. So to come to England, which is a tough place to play against a relatively settled England side, to be 2-1 down, but potentially being able to draw a series, I think is a huge credit to them. And I think England, they have a good chance again of winning the series. I think a lot of people's predictions ahead of the series were sort of 3-1 to England, just given everything. And, that's still very much on the cards. I think of the two sides, I think they look the most sort of wary at this point, especially the bowlers. So it'll be interesting to see how they revamp their bowling going into that final test, because it'll be a big ask to ask those same bowlers to try and win them one more game on a pitch which, historically has been good for batting. So it'll be interesting to see. But like you say, the series still plenty to play for, and should be a good finale.
If we go back to the first innings, I think many people thought India's first innings total, when you saw sort of England bowlers getting a bit of movement on that second day, I thought 350 looked a fairly competitive total. But then obviously the way batting changed that, with 5 of the top 7 getting at least 70. Obviously we're coming to Root and Stokes shortly, but it was a huge knock by Crawley and Pope in particular. Manchester didn't go on to get those big scores. They just showed what they can do and why that Crawley Duckett opening partnership in particular can be so effective on its day.
Yeah, and for all the criticism that's come sort of Crawley's way, and I think justifiably so from an individual standpoint, I think the big tick mark for them is how they perform as a duo. Even if it is Duckett that has done the bulk of the scoring, I think they have strung together quite a few sort of 100-run partnerships now, even if it's not always the most consistent. But when they do, it really lays the platform for the rest of the England batting lineup to kick on. And because they score so quickly as well, it just takes the wind out of the sails of the opposition. And we saw, like, for the first time, Bumrah seem sort of, really quite toothless, which we don't see very often.
Yeah.
And, it's a huge credit to Crawley and Duckett for getting them off to that start and laying the platform for Root and Stokes.
If we on to Root now, I have to move up to second in all-time Test run charts. It felt almost inevitable once he got in, or 2030. He just almost felt that he was going to get that 120 runs that he needed.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of Root now. It's like you said, that inevitability. And I think we were discussing last week that now that he'd got some runs under his belt, don't be surprised if he goes on and just gets a bulk of runs now in the last two tests. And, he did that at Old Trafford. It's amazing to think that he is now behind Tendulkar. Growing up, that record just seemed like just this untouchable thing, especially with everything that comes with Tendulkar. But to see Root with a real chance of potentially getting there and surpassing it, I think it's a huge credit to Root. I think he's a bona fide great of England cricket, a batting great. England haven't always produced, sort of statistically at least, sort of those kind of batters to rival the likes of like Tendulkar, Kallis, Ponting, just numbers wise. I think, Sir Alistair Cook was probably the first proper batter to do that. He got sort of 12,000 runs. But I think Root is the first genuine sort of that middle order giant that England should be very proud of, because, he's shown all around the world that he scores runs against the best bowlers. I think he rightfully deserves this position that he finds himself in now. And, I guess the one thing for him is he wants to get that 100 in Australia to really sort of silence everyone. But whatever happens, I think, to sit behind Tendulkar now is a huge effort, and he should be commended. Maybe in a couple of years' time, when we're doing this podcast, we might be talking about the day Root goes past Sachin Tendulkar. But for now, it's a huge credit to him.
And he's obviously back to number one in the current rankings. Him and Harry Brook swapped at the start of the series, and now Root's back on top. But for Harry Brook, other than he obviously had that great innings at Edgbaston in that with Jamie Smith, but it's been a slightly disappointing series for him.
Yeah, and I think it was always one of those things where when someone first bursts on the scene, it's very easy to get carried away sort of with someone. I think with time, people will begin to sort of work out various weaknesses, whether it's technical or a mental thing. And I think Brook, we've seen him sometimes get a bit impetuous at the crease and sort of try and force things. I think that's sort of seen him come unstuck a few times. And I think he, just from my sort of observations, I think he does probably have a little bit of a weakness against quality spin. We saw in Pakistan in the winter, in those last two tests, when they did make the pitches more spin friendly, after that huge 100 he scored, he sort of didn't really score much after that. Sort of in a one-day series or T20 series in India, he had some troubles against spin. And, Washington Sundar, just the way Washington sort of worked him over, and he just sort of ran past him. And it seemed quite elementary from a spin bowler's point of view. Sort of he almost could read what Harry Brook was going to do. And I think that's just something that Brook will have to work on. Again, he's still super young, so there's still time to rectify it. But yeah, he, after a good start, he has sort of petered out. And I think he's still a work in progress. I think admittedly he has had a lot of his big scores on sort of more batting friendly wickets. Generally, you think of Pakistan, and obviously playing in England. A couple of the hundreds in New Zealand were sort of good because those conditions can be sort of bowler friendly. But I still think there are areas of his game where he can improve, and I think he will, because he seems naturally very talented. It's just a matter of, I think, recognizing those moments where you sort of don't need to go as hard and just maybe just play the waiting game a little bit. And, if you want a good example of how to do that, just look at his Yorkshire mate, Joe Root. I think he would do well to sort of just take a few pointers from Root in that sense, especially against spin bowling going forward.
Moving on to the captain, obviously we spoke about him quite a bit this series from his from the bowling side of things, and we said that he hasn't quite been fine with the bat, and he just produces an innings that we've seen it a few times over the years.
Yeah, I think he must have been listening to us, Dom. Yeah, he it was like the throwback to sort of the 2019 and prior Ben Stokes, and I think it was only a matter of time. I think, and I guess being an all-rounder, they often say when you do one thing right, that's sort of the bowling, the batting often picks up, and maybe his 5-wicket haul in the first innings helped him just with that confidence. But yeah, he looked like he was like the old Stokes again with the scoring, the shots, and yeah, it's great for him and great for England if he can score those runs, because England's middle to lower order is really the engine room for sort of how they amass their scores, and he does still have a big part to play in that. And we know his captaincy has been good and his bowling has been improving since he's become fitter, but those runs are still super crucial. And again, with an eye to Australia, those runs I'm sure will make a difference if he can put them together. So yeah, that 100 that he made was great, and yeah, good for him, because it's been a while. It's been 2 years, I think, since he got his last 100. He's been through a lot as well, just off-field things. So yeah, it was great from that point of view that he was able to get those runs.
It was, I think, 2017 that his last 5-wicket haul in Test cricket. He was just in that mood again where you worry a bit that he's going to overdo it. But if he can maintain this form and fitness, I mean, that's just a huge asset for England ahead of the Ashes.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess it's hard to know whether he's injured or whether he's not, because he always seems to be grabbing something. I think this test, the new one, was his right bicep, I think. But I guess if he's bowling and getting wickets, I think, England will be happy. He'll be happy. He seemed at the end of the game to sort of shoo away any kind of concerns about his fitness. So I guess that's a reassuring thing. But yeah, like you say, him back bowling, not only just he on his own is a very kind of penetrative bowler, but just for the balance of the entire team, I think it offers a lot for England when he is bowling at full tilt. And yeah, again, great to see Ben Stokes do that. And I think I saw a stat that he's now alongside Sir Gary Sobers and Jacques Kallis for, I think, depending on how you filter it, it's, I think, 7,000 plus runs and 200 plus wickets in Test cricket. He's one of 3 people to do that, which, we talk about him maybe not being the most consistent player, but it shows that when he does come off, he puts in these huge all-round performances that I guess are on par with, 2 of the greatest ever. So yeah, fair play to Stokes.
There's another big effort from the seam attack, which has been pretty consistent throughout the series. There was one change for this test. Obviously, Liam Dawson coming in for Shoaib Bashir. And I mean, it started really well with the early wicket of Jaiswal. Obviously, no wickets in the second innings, bowled 45 overs, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of them. It was almost a bit similar with Sam Cook with the Zimbabwe test. It's he didn't overly impress on his debut there, and now he seems to be down the pecking order. You kind of hope that Liam Dawson does get a bit of a run and not be judged just off this test.
Yeah, I do think it would be unfair if he's judged based on one test. But again, I think in some ways he lived up to expectations in that, the talk about what he offers over Bashir is that he's a spin bowler that can be economical, that can tie up an end probably better than Bashir can, and he offers lower order runs. I think we saw both of those things. The wicket taking aspect, I think, wasn't there. And I think moving forward, it maybe depends on how England sort of view, sort of the importance of a spin and how they want to use them. Because do they view spin as sort of their way of winning big matches and big series? Or do they just want a spinner that sort of ties up an end and allows their sort of ever-expanding pace battery to sort of rotate? If it's the latter that they're after, sort of they're happy with a spinner that just ties up an end. And on his day he might get some wickets. Then maybe Dawson is a good long-term or reasonably long-term prospect. I know he's gone on in age now, but just for the immediate future, that might be what they look for. And maybe Dawson will now get a little bit of a run in the side. But if they are sort of still after they turn to Bashir because of the physical attributes he has and potentially a higher ceiling in terms of wicket taking, even if he may not control runs. If that's what England look at, then I don't know, maybe they will go back to Bashir. But I think you're right. I don't think Dawson should be judged just on this one test. Coming back after 8 years on a pitch sort of that wasn't offering too much, I think it would be harsh to judge him just on that. But I am interested to see how England handle just their spin options in general, because Liam Dawson offers a certain skill set, which is that sort of controlling role. Bashir can get wickets. We've seen him get quite a lot of fifers, but he does go for runs. For a while, they liked Rehan Ahmed. He's sort of kind of becoming a batsman now, I think. But they have all these different options. It'll be interesting to see how England just manage spin in general going forward. But yeah, I foresee Dawson getting at least a few more games because I don't think he did, glaringly badly. He just, he did as well as I think everyone probably thought he would do.
If we sort of move on and look at India now, just look at the way sort of Jadeja and Washington Sundar in particular sort of saw out that final day. I think it just shows that I think questions at the start of the series with the way sort of Josh Young were going through the lower order at Headingley. I think it just shows that they do have that depth to the batting order that perhaps was a concern at the start of the series.
Yeah, and I think fair play to Washington Sundar. He has taken on that responsibility as a batter quite nicely, to be honest. And I think he in many ways, I think in domestic cricket he has a much more of a reputation as being a batter. So I think probably to Indian fans this isn't a huge surprise, but certainly he has strengthened that middle to lower order a lot. And again, going to the Oval, and I've been calling for Kuldeep Yadav, but again, I don't see them necessarily changing the makeup of this team. To be honest, I think Washington has gotten wickets whenever he's been asked to bowl. Good wickets as well, top order wickets. He's contributed with the bat now a couple of times. I think he's done a great job, and Jadeja again just doing what Jadeja does, very quietly, just amassing a really good record for this tour. I think India, I think both teams' top orders are a little bit suspect still. And I think India have found a lot of safety with that sort of 5, 6, 7 position now in the series. And Jadeja and Washington have been a big part in that.
You almost draw a bit of a comparison to the second edge baton, where England had the opportunity to sort of bat out the final day for a draw, which they didn't do. I mean, obviously there are different conditions. It probably was, slightly easier for the batters here. But that could have been just a bit of a lesson to England as well, the importance of digging in and earning a draw.
Yeah, and I think everyone has been sort of saying that and hoping England will maybe sort of see the value in a draw one of these days. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what Ben Stokes and sort of the England setup think at the best of times. But yeah, I think India showed that, especially in the 5-test series, the value of a draw. And sort of going forward, potentially for the Ashes, if England find themselves in a situation where they're leading and they have to draw a series to try and sort of save their lead to potentially, regain the Ashes, would they be willing to go for that draw? I think this series has shown the value of playing out a draw. I know England still lead the series 2-1, but India have managed to still give themselves a chance to draw the series. And I think, Test cricket, that's the beauty of Test cricket. I think it's the one format where a draw still is a valid result and still has meaning. And we hope that England sort of slowly begin to see that going forward. But yeah, this was a perfect example of when a draw is really valuable.
And for the captain, Shubman Gill, obviously had a brilliant start to the series, as we've touched upon. A few low scores, and then a lot of pressure on him. He came in the middle at 0 for 2. But that was just another brilliant innings by him in what has been a very good series.
Yeah, and I think this was easily his best innings, just given the situation and everything that was going on and how they lost narrowly at Lord's. I think what he did to lead in that third innings especially was huge, and really I think would have inspired the rest of those batters to sort of come out and follow suit, because I guess you've got to also remember that he's quite young and a lot of the team members are quite young as well. So to see someone sort of in that age bracket and sort of someone like you going out and just handling the pressure and sort of leading the way, I think would have been huge for someone especially like a Washington Sundar, to sort of come in and dig in as well. So yeah, I think what Shubman has done was massive, and yeah, he's again on the precipice of breaking all sorts of records at the Oval. So we'll wait and see where he finishes up in the series. But I think he'll have to play exceptionally well at the Oval to outdo this 100 he's just scored at Old Trafford, because I personally think that's been his best innings of the series so far.
And now the end, there was a bit of a talking point at the end of the game, with England kind of offering Ben Stokes shake hands for the draw, with Jadeja and Washington both sort of in sight of their centuries. They refused, which England weren't best pleased about by the looks of it. Now, I don't think it is perhaps as big a deal as it's been made out, but what did you think to the end? Do you think India, I think we both agree that India were well in the rights to carry on there. They deserve to reach the milestones after the effort they put in.
Yeah, I think, firstly, I agree. I think a lot has been made of it, but it's one of those grey areas where when a game peters out to a draw, there's no hard and fast rule as to what the teams need to do. Often it's just like a gut feel and a mutual agreement between the two sides, and that's it. But I think India were well within their rights to carry on. It did seem as though Stokes, as we know, because he's so averse to draws, when he finally realised that sort of England couldn't secure even the most remote of wins, it sort of felt like Stokes was like, okay, I'm done. That was just sort of the perception it gave, and sort of he was willing to sort of end it. But of course, India and a lot of other teams, I think, still see the value in sort of what you can get out of a draw, even if it is a personal kind of milestone. Because I think if India were compromising their own win for a personal milestone, I think that becomes a much bigger issue, like a more systemic issue for the team. I think this one, the draw had been secured. They were so close to hundreds anyway. I think Jadeja was 89, Sundar was in the 80s as well. And in the end, it only took them 5 extra overs to score those whatever runs they needed. It wasn't sort of a huge grind thereafter. So I think India didn't do anything wrong personally. And, with England, some of the comments that some of the players were saying and that were picked up on the stump mic and some of the comments Stokes made in the press conference, I think there have been times, this England side firstly has done a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff, and a lot to sort of reinvigorate Test cricket, both in England and also around the world to a degree. But I think the one area where sometimes they sort of don't help themselves is sort of when they kind of adopt this self-proclaimed sort of arbiters of what should be done, what shouldn't be done, sort of. And I think that's where maybe this whole issue has kind of flared up, because some of the narrative and some of the comments that have been made, it almost seems as though Stokes just can't believe that India didn't see things the way he did. But again, there's no hard and fast rule for this situation. It's sort of until both teams actually mutually agree to a draw in that situation. Technically, India could have played out the whole 15 overs, the remaining 15 overs, if they wanted. So I think that's one area where I think England maybe didn't help themselves in this test, and just in the sort of Bazball era. Some of the it's been well documented, some of the kind of comments around this kind of stuff. In the 2023 Ashes, there was a lot of this kind of the spirit of cricket kind of narrative that was going on. But I think overall, like you say, a lot has been made of it. I think neither side did anything wrong. Stokes did what a lot of captains do and offered that handshake. Jadeja and Sundar were well within their rights to carry on. It's just what happens sometimes in Test cricket. But and fair play to Stokes as well. Like, he was well within his rights to not bowl his frontline bowlers because he wants to protect them for the Oval. So him bowling sort of part-timers, that was perfectly fine as well. But by that same token, I think he didn't have to necessarily get too sort of annoyed at the fact that Jadeja and Sundar wanted to sort of do what they wanted to do in that situation as well. So it's one of those things, because there's a big grey area with this. It's always going to be divisive. I think overall, India didn't do anything wrong in this situation. But yeah, it's just added a bit more spice to an already kind of interesting series. So we'll see how it all ends up at the Oval.
Yeah, it was clearly frustrating from Stokes at the end as well, with the way that final day went. Would you say, do you think England were too late in their declaration, or?
Yes, I think, again, the way the pitch
it's hard to say if that would have changed the game. But,
yeah, exactly, because the pitch turned so kind of placid by the end. There was a bit of uneven bounce and so on when the ball was new, but again, by the end it became so flat that it's hard to know if declaring a bit earlier would have made much of a difference. I guess they could have potentially declared 50 to 100 runs sooner, potentially. But again, like you say, it's hard to know for sure how much of a difference that would have made, because again, the pitch did look quite slow by the end. I guess again, you could potentially go back to the toss and wonder, could Stokes have batted instead of bowled? But I think, to be fair, despite Stokes choosing to bowl first, England actually had a really good first innings. I think to restrict India to 350 odd was, I think, a great effort in the end. And yeah, it's hard. I'm not, to be honest, I don't know if much would have made a difference, really. Maybe an earlier declaration would have given him a better chance to maybe get a few more wickets on that last day, potentially, or even on day 4, but it's hard to know. But even that, sort of, if they were potentially extending that lead to allow Stokes to maybe get 100, for example, I guess that's another instance of sort of, did they extend things too much for a personal milestone then, and then when they were sort of making their comments towards Jadeja and Sundar, it was potentially could be seen as a bit hypocritical. But again, I think overall there isn't much I think England could have done. I think the pitch just looked very kind of slow by the end. So, yeah.
If we're sort of finished by looking ahead to the fifth test, starts on Thursday, so it's another quick turnaround. For England, Jamie Overton's been called to the squad. Obviously, Gus Atkinson's still in the squad, so you would anticipate that at least one of them comes in and gives Chris Wokes or Bryden Carse a rest.
Yeah, you would think so. I think of everyone, probably Bryden Carse looks the most likely to be rested. I don't know what you think on this, but I personally think of all the bowlers, I think Carse looked the most kind of cooked. So maybe he's the one that could be given the rest. And I guess Gus or Jamie Overton. I guess Atkinson has kind of been in and around a bit longer. So if he is legitimately fit, I guess he could easily play. He offers good bowling and also runs down the order as well. So I don't think anything is lost there. But even if they turn to Overton as well, he in the one test he did play, I think 3 years ago, he showed he could bat. I think he got 97 or something. So yeah, I think either of them could realistically replace Carse. I think an interesting one will be Jofra. I wonder how they'll treat him, because he offers something different on these pitches, but also he's coming back after 4 years, and he's already had to bowl on 2 quite hard wickets to bowl on. I mean, what would you do personally if you were in charge? Like, what would you risk Jofra for another test, or would you turn to someone else?
I think if he's happy to go, I'm happy to keep Jofra in. I think Bryden Carse will probably be the one I would drop out. I'd like to see Gus Atkinson back in if he's fit, because obviously he had a great impact when he came to the side. I'm not a huge fan of Jamie Overton's inclusion in the side. I can see why they like him. But I mean, the fact he's been added to the squad, whether it is just cover, but that seems to add someone at this stage to the squad if you're not going to play him. And obviously he does. I mean, they both do. Overton and Atkinson both bring something with the bat as well. But I'd see Gus Atkinson come in, probably for Bryden Carse. Chris Wokes, I wouldn't have anticipated him play all 5 test matches. But I think as a new ball bowler, I think if he's fine. I think the interesting ones for India, obviously Ricky Ponting. He's been in the wars a bit throughout the series. He now won't play in the final test. What do you see India doing there? Do you think just a straight swap with Jurel?
I think so. I think Jurel has been exposed now for 2 tests. His keeping has pretty much been, he hasn't sort of done anything terrible behind the wickets. And I think in the warm-up games, I know the warm-up games you can't really translate or compare with test level, but I think he was okay in the warm-up games as well. And what little test cricket he has played, he's shown that he can bat well. So I personally think that it'll be a straight swap. Again, my sort of focus goes towards that Shardul Thakur position, because, as you know, I keep talking about Kuldeep Yadav, but again, given how, like you said, the reinforcing the batting has helped them so much in the series since that first test, I again don't necessarily see Kuldeep Yadav playing. I think Akashdeep will probably replace Kambodge if he's fit. But to be honest, I think just before we got on this the podcast, I saw some reports that Arshdeep was in line to make his debut. So I guess he's probably replacing someone. And I guess that'll be an interesting thing for what they do with Bumrah as well, because obviously he was penciled in for only 3 tests for the series, even before the series started, and technically he's played his three tests now. So it'll be interesting to see if he's the one that Arshdeep replaces, if these rumors are true, if these reports are true, or if it's Akashdeep, or sort of what they do there. But yeah, I don't see them changing the fundamental balance too much. I think they like having that batting depth, and it's worked for them now for generally for the series. So yeah, I don't see too much changing there. I think Jurel in for Pan, maybe Akashdeep for Kamboj. I personally, as much as I'd like to see Kuldeep Yadav, I don't know if he will play, to be honest.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week. The final test of this great series gets underway at the Oval on Thursday. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Thank you, Mohan, for your contribution.
Thanks as always, Dan.